Hello there and welcome to the Big Picture here on Rajya Sabha TV, where today we're talking of the big story from the US. Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton notched resounding victories in New York, silencing most critics about their command of the race as the front-runners of their respective parties. And this win, in fact, they have moved significantly closer to their parties' nominations. Both Trump and Clinton have fought bitterly for months to keep their rivals at bay, and each slogging through primary contests that, of course, have exposed vulnerabilities as well in their candidacy and, of course, their campaigns. So what are the big takeaways from Tuesday's victories? To help us understand that, we have in studio, we've got Professor Christopher S. Raj from JNU's Center for Canadian, US and Latin American Studies. We also have Mr. Pinak Ranjan Chakravarty, who's a former MES Secretary and also a distinguished fellow at ORF, who's joining us in studio. And also from the capital, we've got former diplomat BS Prakash joining us as well. And hopefully we will have a senior journalist with us too, joining us later on the show. But first, if I could come to you, Professor Raj, just looking at the picture so far, is this the most decisive, clear picture that we're seeing yet as far as both the front runners are concerned?
Well, I would say this primary election process is really nearing. You know, the next 5 states are equally important. But here the New York has its own presentation. When the primaries began in New York, there was doubtful for Donald Trump. But Hillary always had the brighter picture,
yes,
saying that she belongs to that state. She was a senator.
Perhaps because of familiarity, you know, she was a big political figure anyway. Donald Trump, of course, came out of nowhere.
Yeah.
And now, of course, we are seeing how things have
Twice
changed.
she has been a senator,
yes,
elected from this region. Donald had only that he was born in New York. So that's the only thing. But the way the results are out, it certainly is picturing these two people in different parties, a very front. I think they have crossed the front runner situation. Okay. They are now competing into a situation where they would go to the national convention. So the difference between both of, Hillary and the nearest rival, Sanders, is, you know, if you take the total seat that they need at the national convention is 2,383.
Yes, that's right.
And she is almost reaching 1,000.
Yeah, she has 1,930 in the last count that we did see.
So she, and comparatively, Sanders has 1,093, which is a wide gap. And Philadelphia and next, other 5 states, I'm sure Hillary will get a better chance. Only thing is now the American public have to make their mind whether they would vote for a woman candidate. That's the main thing finally when they go to the national convention. So, and that is a Democratic Party will have to take a major take on this. She has performed well as a Secretary of State, I would say, in the national picture too. So she dissociated from Obama right at the point of, I think she had made her mind by 2012 to campaign for the presidential nomination.
Yeah.
So she was dissociating from Obama some of it.
The woman factor, sir, do you think that is a hindrance, or in fact that is in fact something that is propelling her forward? Last time, of course, we did see that didn't make much of a difference because I think the African-American factor with Barack Obama was just so high, that somehow she just had to give in. But this time around, do you think it is really her time?
I think so. I think that the time has come that the Americans broke a barrier when they elected Barack Obama. And I think maybe this time they'll break the other barrier, the gender barrier, and make Hillary the next president. I'm just hoping that it would happen. I'm also basically answering the point that the American public may not hold it against her. And she has a lot of experience.
Yes.
She has been the wife of a president for 2 terms. So, and I remember that time they used to say that for the price of 1, you get 2.
Yeah.
Because both of them they're very capable people.
Yes.
And then she served as Secretary of State. And then she peeled off to obviously prepare for this election, which she seems to have done fairly well. And by winning New York, I think the signal has gone out that she's certainly marching ahead to get the nomination. So the American public will be faced with the choice of Hillary versus possibly Trump, I think. And you can see they will weigh it out and pros and cons. But I think Hillary has a very good chance.
Yeah. Okay. Let's also we'll of course talk about, the Donald Trump and of course Ted Cruz as well. But if you could just finish up with Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders. Mr. Prakash, of course, there with us. I'm also told we are joined now by Manoj Kumar Joshi, senior journalist as well. Mr. Prakash, if I could come to you as a former diplomat and looking at how things, of course, are panning out across the US, who would be better at this point of time, Bernie Sanders or, of course, Hillary Clinton?
I think they represent two very different parts of the political spectrum. Bernie Sanders was quite an unusual, I already used the word was, I should say is, he's quite an unusual candidate. He's an elderly person, but he really spoke a language that was very different. He espoused causes which are not normally espoused so strongly in America, about equality, about opportunity, about the unemployed, almost a language of socialism, what would we call social democrats in the European context. Compared to Bernie Sanders, Hillary is an establishment candidate. I think my co-panelists already spoke about her credentials, and she has impeccable credentials. But to some extent, she really represents what can be done in the real world, while Bernie Sanders was an idealist. So now we will face the choice between two different kinds of belief systems, two different worldviews, if Trump and Hillary were to become candidates. One much more market friendly, one much more belief in individual entrepreneurship, business acumen and so on, and Hillary a much more middle of the road position on economic policies. But Bernie Sanders was almost, in the American context, something unseen, almost a leftist. So to that extent, I think now you would have the mainstream Democratic candidate who is gaining strength. And on the other hand, another non-establishment candidate, which would be Trump, would be very different.
Absolutely. If I could come to you, Manoj, just talking about the US elections this time around, do you think the coverage really in India and the excitement also is comparatively lesser compared to the time of when it was Barack Obama? This time what we probably see are just news about the primaries and the results that come out, and more of course, what Donald Trump has been talking about and those outrageous statements that he keeps going back and forth about. That's perhaps something that has been in the limelight more than anything else.
Well, I think that's been in the limelight, but the reality is that what the primary campaign has told us is that the United States is desperate for change, in the sense that both in the Republican Party and in the Democratic Party, the signal that is being sent to their establishments is that we've had enough of your traditional politics, you've had enough of your traditional ways, we want to change.
Yes.
And this is manifested by, of course, the fact that Mr. Trump, who is definitely not an establishment candidate, is leading the Republican pack, and Bernie Sanders, who is again not an establishment guy, who's virtually, by American standards, a communist, who is giving Hillary Clinton a run for her money.
Yes.
Now, what I do see further when I look at the polls, a very fascinating situation, that if it is Sanders versus Trump, Sanders wins. If it is Sanders versus Cruz, Sanders win. If it is Sanders versus Kasich, Sanders win. And the margins are 15.2 to 11%, 4%. These are the polls as of today. It is only Kasich who can defeat Clinton. So what I'm trying to say is that the polls are saying that in his own way, Sanders is the stronger candidate against all the Republican pack out there. He beats all of them. Whereas we do not find an equivalent on the other side.
All right. Is that also the big takeaway that, that you're getting, sir, that it's really a time for a significant change in the US, as far as the people are concerned, the very fact that Donald Trump is surging ahead in those polls. Yes, he has, of course, seen some big losses too that he saw in Wisconsin. In Colorado, he got not even a single delegate. But having said that, he has secured quite a bit. In fact, he almost secured 95 of the New York delegates, which was kind of expected, knowing that it's his state. But still, he is doing comparatively much better than what critics would have otherwise said.
I think Trump is reaping the benefit of a certain mood in the USA, which is represented by the conservative, you could call them the conservative people with conservative outlook. He is also reaping the benefit of a bit of from the scaremongering that he has been doing, which is like, the kind of statements he's made about Muslims,
Yes.
etc., which has been countered pretty strongly by Hillary Clinton. So he is actually, riding the surge of a particular kind of mood in the USA. Now, whether that mood you call it change or I think it's a mixture of various things. It's a mixture of, I think, how the economy is doing. It's a mixture of how people feel about their own personal security, terrorism, etc. Because there is a lot of fear, I find, and the kind of measures they have taken, under their Homeland Security sort of ministry. So I think he's cashing in on that fear, and that fear seems pretty palpable. Otherwise, he would not have got this kind of a support. So I think that is the major factor, the mood of the people. It's not about market friendly and others. I mean, I don't think there's not much change he will bring about. He'll probably bring about some changes in terms of income tax and things like that, and health care, which he might go back on what Obama has done, etc. More market friendly, more entrepreneurial kind of approach, because he himself is an entrepreneur. Unlike, say, Bernie Sanders, who, as my colleague said, almost, sounds like a commie.
Yes.
I mean, which is quite strange.
Which is also unusual for the US. In fact, for the Democrats, whether they choose Hillary Clinton or Bernie Sanders, it's going to be a unique choice anyway for them. It's going to be a historic choice in a sense.
But I think that choice is now more or less
confirmed,
more or less,
clear.
I would say.
Okay. If you could just talk about Donald Trump again, and talking about those numbers, Professor, he has right now 847 delegates. They need about 1,237 is what a Republican needs. Ted Cruz is still around 553, Kasich 120. Do you think he will probably not have to head to that July convention, and it probably won't be as confusing and messy as perhaps people expected? The decisive mandate may be much earlier.
Well, I do share that feeling what you have made the observation, but it depends on the next 5 states, especially the Pennsylvania state. Once again, how does he speaks there? Because much of his problem is in his addressing the campaign voters. As the Foreign Secretary had mentioned, some of his views are conservative and also security oriented. The Obama administration, to a large extent, has tried to withdraw from US involvement in various parts of the world. So, to some, the idea was Obama felt there should not be soldiers on the foot, but it can be on the air, and technology could be the used better way of solving American foreign policy abroad. But the much headway has not gone through in Europe. That's where Trump tried to say that the much of the Europeans under NATO has not been doing their burden sharing. So he has brought that aspect of burden sharing, which was a greater controversy in 80s and 90s. So that is one thing. Second thing, that the job-oriented situation, Pennsylvania and subsequent when it goes to other states, people are sensitive to the job that it is going to foreigners. 3 aspects I think it is appealing for the, it is foreign policy, mainly China and Europe have taken America for a ride in terms of trade. And secondly, the immigration policy, which the more sensitive, and the immigration relaxation which Obama has done it, is not appreciated by many. So these three things are the mood of the situation. Okay. So he is able to win, and the mood is, normally what happens is there is a cycle. If there was a two-term democratic administration in the state, the subsequent thing is Republican. So the ultimately is the Republicans are now thinking, the Foreign Secretary, I would share, that the American public had made a major change by electing a black American in the White House. That itself was a major social and democratic change. And to that extent, it will appeal to Hillary also. But normally, being part of teaching in the university, I found normally Republicans are in a better situation. Clinton was followed by Bush administration almost 8 years. So this has been the trend. Okay. And the people are open to such situation, I think. And as Dr. Manoj Joshi has said, John Cassius has in terms of votes, the delegates that he has got, he is not even for 300 delegates, but he places him in terms of public opinion is better chance. Yes. But he is thinking he will go to convention as a consensus candidate. Okay. So that's what he is working, and he is not giving up. Yes. He feels Truth is weak. So it will be the people may be tired of Cruz. And he may take advantage of that fatigue towards the end. And the nomination may go in favor. So that's why he is still holding on. But in number-wise, Cruz is much ahead. So Donald Trump is much ahead. Yes. And Cruz is not even 500s, as figures you have mentioned. Absolutely. So I think eventually the Republican convention, which will be held in Cleveland, Ohio, in the month of July, will take a decision. Normally, they have not gone in favor of extreme people getting elected. Okay. And to that extent, America current position is they will favor a candidate which will be appealing to both the electorate as for the public.
All right. That's an interesting look, of course, and since you've been looking at elections for so long now that you're bringing in. Mr. Prakash, if I could come to you, and India, is it looking at these contestants seriously? Is it too early really to take into account what the speeches, of course, that they're making? By the looks of it, if that is the case, then Donald Trump's speeches would be pretty scary for India. Is it there's still time, of course, for India to actually assess all these candidates closely?
I don't think that anything is scary for India as such. The record shows and our experience shows that we have worked well with both Democrats and Republicans over the last so many decades. It depends more on circumstances, whether we are talking of 1971, whether we are talking of the nuclear issue, whether we are talking of a particular matter which is of concern to us. But ultimately, as a democracy, what happens to some extent, just as it's much more in India, there is a kind of a consensus with regard to foreign policy issues. But in the US too, there will be a pragmatic streak. And with a country like India, we are not ideologues, we are not fundamentalists, we are not the troublemakers in the world. We are essentially a status quo oriented kind of a nation. So whoever it is, I think we can do business with them. But having said that, these are very, very different people. Talking only now of Hillary on the one hand and Trump on the other. Currently Trump talks more of an isolationist streak or of winning all deals. He's a deal maker, so he's always looking at any situation as a win or loss. Hillary is a much more traditional internationalist. She knows India, she knows the region. I'm not saying that she's necessarily pro-India. Yes. What I'm saying is that she knows India. Yeah. Trump will also get to know people. We can already see for instance, the changes in Trump's personality. Earlier he was very, very provocative. But look at the statement he made today. He was
Yes.
much more moderate.
Yeah.
So I think the advantage in democracies is that there is always a middle of the ground kind of a thing. So we will wait and watch the fun, and of course our foreign office will study all this seriously. But I don't think that from India's point of view anything is alarmist. On the other hand, I think we can reasonably say that there would be positive and a positive attitude towards India by most of these people whom we are seeing in the fray.
All right. Manoj, if I could come to you, at this point of time, among the candidates that you see and the kind of campaigning that we are seeing, we did discuss about the fact that Donald Trump, he seems to be a media favorite, whether it is, of course, for the right or wrong reasons. And do you think that's also another thing, apart from the good timing of really how the Americans are feeling at the moment, the mood of the nation, it's also the fact that the media too is quite obsessed with what all he's doing, what he's saying. And that in itself is also something that's going perhaps in his favor. Most people seem to be talking about him.
Well, I think that as far as Mr. Trump is concerned, it is something which you have to understand the manner in which American politics, the direction in which American politics is moving. And I think this is a very important juncture in American politics. The media is, in fact, I think, slow to catch up on that. And what we will see in the future, and I think this is very important, and this is what I emphasized earlier as well, that you are going to see in America, which is going to be much more reluctant to intervene abroad, much more reluctant to get involved in the politics of other countries. An America which realizes that they have a huge agenda back home. American politics is broken. They need to do a lot of things to fix their own system. Not only is their politics broken, some large parts of their economy are broken. Their infrastructure is broken. Meaning they used to have one of the best highway systems in the world. That's coming apart. They have virtually no railway system comparable to what China is building, which China has built in the last 30 years. So what the American people are signaling, and you have different levels of signaling. You have one kind of set of signals which are going out to the Republican candidate, which is Mr. Trump, or the leading Republican candidate, Mr. Trump.
Yes.
The other set of signals are going out through Mr. Bernie Sanders, who, as everyone has pointed out, is getting the votes of all the young Democrats. Meaning Hillary Clinton is finding it very difficult to attract the votes of people who are below the age of 45.
Yes.
That's not a good signal. That's certainly not a good signal. And as I explained to you earlier, that the only guy from the point of view of the polls as of today who can beat any Republican candidate, which means Cruz, which means Trump, which means Kasich, is Bernie Sanders.
All right. That's
Clinton,
interesting.
for example, cannot beat Kasich. So, this is a very complex message that's coming out of the United States, and we need to pay it heed. We need to analyze it. I think we still have some time in the future.
Yes, absolutely. And perhaps that's why we are seeing Donald Trump, sobering up a bit, like it was, of course, mentioned by Mr. Prakash as well. Instead, I was about to say that, instead of calling Ted Cruz lying Ted, he actually called him senator today. So perhaps it's a sign of Donald Trump perhaps sobering. And of course, the race getting more interesting as we proceed further ahead into July convention, of course. We'll keep an eye on developments, of course, on all those fronts. Thanks so much, gentlemen, for joining us and helping us understand the big takeaways, really, of the New York primaries. That's it here on The Big Picture. Thanks so much for joining us.